Well, well, well. We have returned for part 2, quite literally Electric Boogaloo. We left off on a cliffhanger in my last astrology video, so today we're going to pick back up where I left off on April 19th here in 2026 to talk about the next big aspect to hit our birth charts, and that is the conjunction between our fair lady Venus and the innovative, exhilarating, and often shocking Uranus, all happening in the sign of Taurus. Go ahead and grab your pens, pencils, your journal, your planner, your favorite stickers, and let's go ahead and reflect upon the stars together. So our story picks back up from our cliffhanger we left off in my previous video, which happened on April 19th when a triple conjunction formed in the sign of Aries. And Aries has been stacked all month long, and that party continues as we carry on into the sign of Taurus. Now, I had mentioned that something was brewing, a storm of sorts was on the horizon just next door to Aries. And when we experience this triple conjunction on the 19th, we have Venus, the domicile ruler of Taurus, sitting at 25 degrees of her home sign. And just on the horizon, 4 degrees ahead of her, is the planet Uranus, who's been chilling out at that precipice, that anaretic degree of Taurus, for a couple of weeks now. Just behind her, she has the Sun, who brings in Taurus season as of the evening of April 19th. Now, with the speed that Venus travels through the zodiacal wheel, she is inevitably going to crash into Uranus on her way out and into Mercury's sign of Gemini. And this conjunction at the anaretic degree with an outer planet as energetic, potent, and powerful as Uranus is going to shake some foundations. What foundations those are all depends on where Taurus sits in your chart. But let's talk about our two planets meeting at 29 degrees of Taurus before we get to that point in this video. So from 25 degrees of Taurus, Venus will ever so slowly approach Uranus until they conjoin on April 23rd in the evening, about 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard, if you're in my time zone. And I just want to bring your attention to something going on in the sidelines while this is happening. I made a keen observation while I was looking at the chart for this conjunction, and while Venus and Uranus are having their face-to-face dialogue, you also have the Sun sitting at 3 degrees of Taurus, which is the moon's exalted degree of her exaltation, and he is connecting to the moon at 3 degrees of Leo. So we have a first quarter moon with impactful mutual reception. And on top of that, we've got a player 3 hanging out by the sidelines, by the bleachers, and that is Neptune, just entering the 3rd degree of Aries as well. And so he is setting the stage for the moon by trine, whereas the Sun is setting these circumstances in a tense square from Taurus. So while this isn't going to be the focus of this video, it is still something to take into consideration because these aspects being made to the moon are being made from the Sun's exaltation and her own exaltation. So there's still a distinct relationship between these 3 planets, basically creating a side arc to the main story that Venus and Uranus are closing out before they move on to the next sign. Now, if you're curious, there is actually one other significant aspect that I noticed in this pileup of planets, and that will be taking place on April 22nd at about 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard, when the moon conjoins Jupiter in her domicile of Cancer, where Jupiter is also exalted. They will be conjoining at 17 degrees of Cancer. Now, this is an interesting aspect. It's in a harmonious position with Taurus. This forms a sextile between the 2 houses, and it is in a square, a tense aspect to everything else that's going on in Aries as well. These aren't tight aspects. They're not within engagement range, which, if you remember, that is the rule of 3. 3 degrees equals engagement range. But because I practice whole sign house astrology on this channel, This is still an open dialogue that these planets are having. And so you can think of this aspect in Cancer as its own seeding point, its own initiation, where the topics of the moon, Jupiter, and wherever Cancer is in your chart are concerned. Once again, that is something for a separate video though. Now let's get on to the bulk of what this is supposed to be about and what you all came here for in the first place. As always, we must start at the start, because that is the most important place to start. So let's take a look at the two planets involved in this conjunction, which are Fair Lady Venus and disruptive, rebellious, and inventive Uranus. Now, I just want to point out that there's some unique, and I say that lightly, mythology surrounding Venus and Uranus. Uranus's name comes from Uranus, who is the father of Kronos in Greek mythology. Essentially, Kronos overthrows his father and ends up castrating him. And Kronos throws said dismembered member into the sea, and from this dismembered member come forth white, frothy sea foam. Make of that what you will. And it is from this sea foam, very questionable if you ask me, that Aphrodite is born. And so there is actually a mythological connection between these two planets to begin with. Aphrodite being born of Uranus. I will say, as fascinating as this myth is, when you take a closer look at the significations that have been assigned to Uranus post-discovery, you may actually find that the myth of Prometheus fits his description a little better, where Prometheus is a god himself, steals the fire, the light of the gods, and brings it to gift it to humanity at the base of Mount Olympus. And that is the essence of Uranus. This planet is rebellious, it is innovative, but amongst that, there's also this sense of emancipation, of freedom, of needing to break free from something, from a limitation or an ordinance that has been thrust upon you. The shadow side of Uranus is similar to Pluto insofar as having an eruptive, destructive quality. I mean, what happens when you shake things up? Things can break, things can fall apart. Doesn't necessarily mean it's all bad. I mean, if you look at the Tower card, this is the representation of that tarot card. The Tower signifies walls that need to come down, that need to be broken. I'm getting a little off topic here though, because actually it is the Fool card of the major arcana that represents and corresponds to Uranus. And from the Fool, what do we have besides naivete but just a sense of wonder and amazement? There is no clear plan here. There is only freedom to go wherever our desires and whimsy take us. Uranus can also bring shockwaves. And in an earth sign like Taurus, yes, you will often hear delineations that have to do with physical seismic tremors, earthquakes. Whether or not that happens, I mean, knock on wood that doesn't. I'm just putting that out there. This is a physical manifestation that can be reflected from this combination. Moving on to the planet Venus, our fair lady, the Empress in the major arcana. Venus is everything that Mars is not. You get the significations of these two planets' domiciles from their contrarieties. So whereas Venus's cosmic lover, Mars, represents rage and conviction and conquest and war, conflict, essentially, Venus represents connection, bringing things together, building and creating, and enjoying the pleasure of doing so. She wishes to soothe, she wishes to bring ease to our lives. In her domicile, Taurus, which is this earthy sign all about sensuality and tactile sensations, not just sensuality in the sexual nature, but feel-good vibes. Is that not what we want out of our leisure time? We just want to feel good, at ease, calm, and soothed. So there's a physicality to Venus when she transits her home sign of Taurus. Those may be aesthetic physicalities. Venus is all about the aesthetics and beauty. Venus can represent relationships. Often when someone approaches me as an astrologer to ask about relationships, the first signifier I'm looking for in the chart is Venus. And more so than that, she can represent femininity and womanhood overall. And so anything to do with mothers and aunties and sisters and just the women and femmes in our lives, we look to Venus. With our quick recap of these two planets in mind, now we can start to fit them together in this puzzle, this brain teaser that the skies have presented us with, in order to start delineating and reflecting upon the possibilities that they could be representing. One thing to keep in mind as well is these planets can often feel antithetical to one another. When I list out their topical significations, you get chaos and discord and freedom with ease and calm and relaxation and leisure. But there are certain topics that cross over as well, and so you'll see that as I run through this list of delineations. The first of which is an electrifying, sensual, or tactile experience. And as I already said, this is not just about sexual innuendo here. Taurus is simply a tactile sign because really, think about the physical sensations and the reactions in the body that you have when you are at ease in a state of calm, pure relaxation. There is a tactile feel to that. And so Uranus coming in brings an interesting sensory experience to the mix because he is electrifying. He can often symbolize actual thunderstorms. Think about any upcoming new experiences you have slotted in your schedule and what type of physical sensations those are going to bring you. Are they going to be shocking and exhilarating, or could they be frightening and overwhelming? On the topic of relationships, of course, we have to talk about relationships when we're talking about Venus. This could signify an enthralling, an utterly captivating, but also surprising relationship or interpersonal connection. This could be an aspect that represents an actual person, their personality, their character is very lively, like a live wire. They are very loud and present and free-spirited, or this could be the dynamic of a relationship entirely. I feel like a lot of us may know what it feels like to be bit by the love bug and experience what we call in the polyamorous community NRE, or new relationship energy. It can be electrifying and it can be very, very enthralling to the point of obsession in unhealthy circumstances. Now, on the flip side of that, still speaking about relationships, whether they be romantic, sexual, or platonic, or even familial, depends on where Taurus is in your chart, Uranus represents emancipation, escape, and freedom, breaking free from a corral, from being backed in a corner. So this could also be the emancipation from a restrictive relationship or a restrictive connection. This could be a breakthrough in an existing dynamic or relationship where new freedoms are put on the table for you to explore, either solo or with the partner. Keeping Venus in mind, of course, we also have the topic of women and femmes, and shocking news about those women and femmes. Remember what I say in my videos. Your birth chart in this practice is not just the blueprint to your psyche, your personal psyche. It can represent the people and places and situations around you as you navigate your life story. This aspect, if it's placed in a house of the other, can actually represent shocking news, exhilarating and exciting revelations that have to do with someone else in your close proximity. So what is going on with the women and femmes in your family structure, in your workplace, or in your interpersonal relationships? And of course, Venus is all about beauty and those aesthetics. And so this is probably one of the first topics that people think of when they think of a shocking Venusian experience. a simple change in aesthetics, whether that's you yourself and your style. Now, I'm not out here trying to give any sort of beauty advice. I know the millennial thing to say is don't get your hair cut because Mercury's in Gatorade and you're going to regret this as soon as he stations direct. But this really could be just a rewriting and a breakthrough in understanding ourselves, depending on where Taurus is situated. What do you find beautiful? What do you find aesthetically pleasing? That might change in a shocking way when Venus conjoins Uranus. All of these delineations that I've given can be looked at through the lens of conclusions, of closure, and of endings. Because we're at the anaretic degree of Taurus, that means both of these planets will soon be moving into the next sign in sequence, which is Gemini. And further emphasis to this is the fact that Uranus will be staying in Gemini for the next 7 years. Now, if you want to know what this ingress is going to feel like or look like, you can actually look back to last year. Because last year, on July 8th, 2025, Uranus moved into Gemini for the first time. However, his stay was very brief because at 1 degree of Gemini and spare change, on September 6th, he ended up stationing retrograde and moving back out of Gemini and back into Taurus as of November 9th. And so July 8th to November 9th of 2025, take a look at what was going on around that time, because that is essentially a taste or a brief glimpse into what Uranus will be bringing to Gemini for the next 7 years. And no, we are not going to be talking about my chart as an example because I have Gemini in the 7th house, and I will just briefly tell you, I was not having a good time last year. I'm a little nervous about this transit, but Venus has our back. Venus totally has our back. I am confident. Positive mental attitude, everybody. To give some brief overall delineations of my own, though, because these planets are essentially moving into Gemini within about 2-3 days of each other, this change from a solid, earthy sign like Taurus to the double-bodied, airy, intellectual sign ruled by Mercury of Gemini really feels like a desire to capture, record, or else render a sensory experience permanent, or at least attempt to experiment and repeat that sensory experience. Let's not forget that Gemini is highly analytical and very experimental. There's a heavy dose of intellectuality, of analytics, and of logic in this sign. We're going from a space that wants to feel good, to experience things that bring tactile pleasure, to a space that is more mental and therefore intangible. Honestly, the way I see this as like a weird literary metaphor is like trying to bottle human emotions, to keep, to preserve something. Because these planets are conjoining at an anaretic degree, a very unstable and rocky degree, this may also kind of feel like a psychedelic experience from start to finish, where you're in the middle of your psychedelic experience, and moving into Gemini is that coming down and touching back into reality, regaining control of your mental senses and your intellectual logic. I'm also wondering how many of us may be journaling or attempting to intellectually deconstruct whatever has happened at this 29th degree of Taurus. Remember, if we look back to the myth of Prometheus that I used to describe Uranus's story here, what higher truths, the fire of the gods, authenticity, knowledge, intelligence, did we try to absorb and integrate and perhaps maybe failed or fumbled in Taurus? Do we have the capacity to record that and try again? Is there a way that we can integrate this higher truth now that these planets are moving into a more intellectual and communicative sign? And there you have it, folks. Another video chock full of enlightening delineations that I hope you can glean some wisdom and insight for to help you navigate what's coming up in your life story. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you for your support on my channel. And if you're interested in knowing more about how the planets communicate and what they have to say about you and your life story, by all means, I invite you to follow me over on Instagram, where you can book a one-on-one virtual consultation with yours truly. I offer birth chart readings and different tiers of tarot card readings if that interests you as well. And I would love to have a one-on-one dialogue with you about what the planets have to say about your life story thus far and in the future. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. I cannot wait to see all of you in the next one. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe if any of my content resonates with you and if you've been enjoying the learning experience thus far. Have a fantastic day, have an even more fantastic week, and don't forget to take care of yourselves and each other, especially in times like these. Bye-bye.